This Patient Empowerment Program podcast episode discusses Susannah's journey and experience 2 years after beginning treatment with an ASO discovered and developed uniquely for her. To learn more about Susannah's diagnosis and the early days prior to her initial treatment, be sure to watch Susannah's story on n-Lorem's YouTube channel or listen wherever you access podcasts.
For the n-Lorem Foundation, N of 1 doesn't mean alone because every patient matters. Hope for nano-rare patients and their families has never been more within reach. Visit n-Lorem.org today to donate and make hope possible.
Biogen is proud to host the 2024 nano-rare patient colloquium. Biogen is a leading biotechnology company that pioneers innovative science to deliver new medicines to transform patient lives and create value for shareholders and our communities. They apply deep understanding of human biology and leverage different modalities to advance first-in-class treatments for therapies that deliver superior outcomes. Their approach is to take bold risks balanced with return on investment to deliver long-term growth. Thank you, Biogen, for hosting and supporting the n-Lorem Foundation and our patient community. The 2024 nano-rare patient colloquium is October 30th through 31st in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Visit n-Lorem.org to register today.
Hello and welcome to the n-Lorem podcast series, the only podcast series focused exclusively on the needs of nano-rare patients and their families. And today we have two very special guests who've been with us almost from the beginning when I think about this. The first is Luke Rosen, who is a father first, an actor, and a firefighter. Among many other things, and his daughter Susannah is a pioneer patient for n-Lorem. Luke, welcome.
Thank you so much, Stan, for everything all you do.
Thanks. And alongside Luke is Jennifer Bain, who is an associate professor of neurology and pediatrics at Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons. And Jennifer has been the treating physician for Susannah from the beginning and has participated in a variety of things that have helped n-Lorem grow and help more patients. Jen, welcome. It's delightful to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this is a special moment because we are approaching 2 years of treatment of Susannah. I think it's now 23 months or something like that. I'm sure Luke and Jen know exactly how long we've been treating. Luke, do you happen to remember? That was a silly question. Do you remember the exact date when you took Susannah in for her first dose?
The October 1 and October 4 is actually when she got dosed. Yeah. So
let's talk about Susannah and her mutation and very briefly how you learned about it and the impact that it had on you and your family's lives.
Yeah, sure. We learned about Susannah's mutation when she was 2 years old. So that was in 2016. And things just weren't happening. A story that we hear a lot and share a lot with other members of the community. She wasn't meeting milestones, and all of a sudden, it just became very clear to us that something was different about Susannah. So after seeing several different doctors, we were able to have her whole genome sequenced. And that's when we were told she has a mutation in KIF1A that nobody else had. And she was the only one at that time. And there was no treatment, no cure, and nothing really to do. And that's when my wife Sally and we decided to start a foundation and find more people. And that was very, very difficult. And we still haven't found anybody in the US who's exactly like Susannah. I mean, nobody's like Susannah. Everybody's different, but so that was a very isolating and lonely feeling until we really found this team of incredible people like Jen and you and so many others. So we're very thankful to have you all as our extended family. And that was a hard thing to hear, especially the no treatment, no cure, and that word that we we fear so much degenerative. So, yeah.
Yeah. No treatment, no cure, degenerative, and degenerative really meant that she was going to progress to the place where her functions would be lost and there would be even less hope.
Yeah, that's really well said. It became one of those moments where you look forward into your future, maybe 10 or 15 years, and it's absolutely not at all what you thought it would be the minute before somebody told you something or gave you some news. So yeah, it was told. We did hear it exactly like that, Stan. You're right. Almost that the disease would become beyond repair, and it was just a new normal or a part of our lives that would have to grieve and accept. So,
how did it change your career?
it certainly did. Yeah, changed my career. I immediately realized there's, gosh, something more meaningful that I should be doing than beer commercials at halftime and acting. And so that's when we shifted and decided to really do whatever we could to find treatment for Susannah. And slowly, as we found more people, other kids like her.
And how about your wife's career?
Yeah, Sally is amazing in so many different things, but she also really slowed things down after, even after we started the foundation, to really be home with Susannah and navigate these, myriad challenges that come up every single day, especially in the very beginning.
So you were a busy actor, no longer, and Sally was a busy chef, and chefs are really busy, and
right.
That too became history, I suppose.
Yep.
Is the way to say it.
Yeah, life changed.
And then of course you ended up at Columbia with Wendy, Chung, and Jen, and the rest of the team, which is a wonderful team. Certainly our experience with them is deeply affecting and wonderful. When did you first hear of n-Lorem?
We first heard of n-Lorem, right before, I guess it was in 2019. Correct me if I'm a little wrong. When we heard that this was happening, and I actually spoke with you, Stan, and you had said, well, I feel like as if I was kind of pounding down everybody's door who might listen and have anything to do with what we understood would be the most immediate and effective intervention available. And so when I spoke with you and you said, well, listen, within a year's time, there'll be a foundation that we're starting. And indeed, within a year's time, we had applied with our physician and had our fingers crossed. And when we heard that we were accepted, we were, of course, just, it's hard to describe. It was a feeling that was hopeful, heartwarming, and scary at the same time. But there was a door that opened that we didn't think was going to open, and hopefully, the thought of Susannah having a different and better life than we thought she would have in the future became a reality for us.
So Columbia became, if not the earliest, certainly one of the earliest institutions with which we worked. And Jen, I'm intrigued to hear how you and the team came to decide that it made sense to try to do this, and all the hurdles that you had to go through to make sure that it happened, and it happened in the right way.
So thank you for adding me to the treatment team. I think Susannah was already had a great powerhouse team. I mean, Wendy Chung obviously assisted with the initial kind of implementation of the diagnosis and initial nomination, and really just chugging forward to getting the clinical trial arm moving. I think I kind of came about because I trained in neurology under our neuromuscular disorder group, where we had been treating under my clinical mentor, Claudia Chiriboga and Daryl DeVivo, taking care of patients with spinal muscular atrophy. And so I had partaken as a sub-investigator on many of the spinal muscular atrophy SMA studies. And then I saw that transition from clinical trial over into clinical practice. And so I think it was, a nice opportunity to use that experience and then kind of lay it over into now a new rare disease. New York Presbyterian is a great institution along with Columbia University. And while there might not have been a perfect recipe already pre-planned for the, I think, execution of the clinical trial, all the pieces were there, all the ingredients were there. And it really took a family who was willing to be flexible and work through the process of finding the right providers and making sure we have all the full team and the full hospital support to actually executing it and getting it done the right way. So I think we learned from a lot and we just kept moving forward. And it was great timing and with a lot of great support and trust.
Trust in the system, trust in ASOs, trust in general.
I think trust in general. I think this was a first in human trial and all of yours are. And so the first time is always, I remember the first day where we stood in a room and you take pictures, but the nerves, even as a clinician of what I'm administering to somebody, you take that on. And so obviously I am not a parent in this scenario, and I cannot empathize enough for a parent in this scenario. But certainly the weight is upon the clinicians who are involved and the whole team who was involved, the anesthesiologists who are sedating somebody and really just helping you through the whole process. So it was a very memorable day.
Yeah. And Susannah by then was so very sick.
She's come a long way. That's for sure in the last 2 years. And I think we're learning a lot about that as she pushes through, teaches us.
So just for clarity, SMA was an untreatable disease until our ASO Spinraza, which changed all that, and we're proud of that. And that experienced and helped open the door to the treatment of neurological diseases with ASOs. And so we get to the first day, and I just can't imagine how terrifying it was, Luke, to take Susannah in as sick as she was in those days, and contemplate having her dosed intrathecally directly in her spinal fluid with a new agent that no one else had ever even had.
Yeah, Stan, I think that, or I know that it was just as profound of a day that day when she first received treatment almost 2 years ago, as it was when we heard that her life was changing and all of our lives changed. I think it was, or I know it was just as life-changing because, we were certainly nervous, and we had, between Dr. Bain and the n-Lorem team and others, it was really well spelled out for us. It was very clearly articulated what the day would look like and exactly what was going to happen with Susannah, to the point where she was able to choose what flavor anesthesia she wanted. Everything was really well planned. So there were no surprises for us, except for, there was more happiness and hope than it was fear, because what else is there? It was, one direction to go. And I remember we were still in the mask protocol, so we had to kind of take our masks down to see how everyone was responding and reacting. And, the smile certainly on my face and on Susannah's face. And I know on Dr. Bain's and Sally's too, there's this, there's a big difference between anxiety and eagerness. And we were very eager rather than anxious, I would say. Yeah.
It's nice to hear. So Jen, very briefly, could you just describe Susannah's clinical course and since the first dose and how that has progressed, and the positives and challenges of all that?
Sure. When I I've known Susannah for several years because I actually had met her prior to the clinical trial, working in the hospital. And one of my colleagues was her primary epilepsy doctor. When we started the clinical trial, I had, I guess, revisited where her clinical state had been. And since I had first met her to kind of right before the clinical trial, she wasn't as interactive as she had been prior. She wasn't walking as independently as she had prior, when I first met her. She had had a lot of these episodes that we were calling seizures. We can call seizures, but were just alterations of consciousness, not being with it, not engaging with the environment around her. And since that initial time period, some of the great changes that at least I've seen, and I think our family has expressed to us, is really just being more awake and more cognitively engaged with her environment. And so those episodes or flashes of being distant and just not as engaged as possible, or much less often. And those, I think, were reported in the recent description of the clinical trial results. And that didn't take too long to start seeing those cognitive improvements. Even things such as that we weren't necessarily measuring in a clinical trial outcome, such as speech and conversation and depth and clarity and singing. We were getting emails with singing on her way to school that, in terms of fatigue, and then obviously just complexity of the songs, she wasn't doing before that. In terms of, so I think cognitively were certainly and have continued to be improvements. Communication and language has certainly improved. In terms of motor skills, we saw, I think, significant improvement in that she wasn't in her wheelchair as often, and she was more full of strength and energy. There have been some trials and tribulations. One of the downfalls of walking more is that you're at risk for falling more, unfortunately. So we've seen some motor plateau, I think, this year, but certainly there was a marked improvement in that first year, which was great to see. And then I think just general happiness and quality of life, less visits to the hospital, less visits to the emergency room, I think the sigh of relief seemed to happen more and more the further away we got from that initial treatment. And just, again, that hope seemed to be coming back more, from my impression, looking at Susannah and her family. I'm not sure if he wants to add some comments about some of the things that are true and some of the things that we've now learning about her as a new normal.
Yeah. No, I think that all of that is, of course, very, very true. I mean, she went to sleepaway camp, for the first time ever. We never thought that would be a possibility, and in many ways, so many thanks to Jen for, handling some curveballs and talking to the people at the camp. It really is, when you talked about trust earlier, I think the answer is, trust in people, right? It's more than anything. You all really have become extended family of ours. And I mean, on the weekends, working and that fatigue, and that, she no longer has that fatigue. She can last an entire day. And that alone is so incredible. And we know that when she is lasting that entire day, she's doing things at school and at camp, like cooking and moving her body in ways that she hadn't. And yes, there's challenges. She's, she lived 10 years, or she's living after 10 years with a really, debilitating disease. And that's a long time to have lost certain skills, but it's incredible seeing her move around. And when she does get up out of her wheelchair, it's a big, bright moment. And those small episodes or small seizures that Dr. Bain was just describing, they were getting to the point where we couldn't even count them all day. It was, her whole day was just this sort of glaze. And she just, that has gone down to, well, sometimes they're more scary now because they're more, we can see them in a more specific way, which I guess is a good thing, because they're not as frequent, and I'm talking, in the hundreds to 2 or 3, and that's like very, very meaningful. But as Dr. Bain said, just her ability to sing and to speak in multiple syllables and to actually connect and make sense and try to trick you. And she's got this she's very smart, and it was like this veil was unlifted with she was living life looking through this veil that was keeping her down, and there was so much inside of Susannah, and now that can come out with laughter and songs and in her own way, really, really communicating, just being incredible.
And she also had significant problems with pain that had to contribute to her misery. And of course, watching your child writhe in pain is hard for any set of parents.
Yep, I think that every parent can empathize with that. It's terrible, this peripheral neuropathy that still does really rear its head, and that's when we know that the next dose is near. Yeah, that went down significantly after the first, after she was dosed to this with this gift, this ASO. And I can't stress how fortunate we are to have Dr. Bain, because if there's any question, anything about her, health, even if it's just us being over, observant parents or concerned parents, it's an immediate call, an immediate callback, and just a connection that it's not. And I constantly recognize this, Dr. Bain. It's a connection that Sally, you and I have, but more so, it's a connection that Dr. Bain and Susannah have. So while I'd like to say Dr. Bain's our best friend, I think Dr. Bain is so connected with Susannah that it's, sometimes I'm even jealous. Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to hear, and as Jen mentioned, some of the earlier data were recently summarized in an important paper that came out in an important journal, Nature Medicine, and all that summarized that. But since that time, we've continued to follow her, and she continues to do things that are very encouraging, I would say.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that we left out that's completely changed our lives that people might not think is, we certainly, I think when we were starting, this wasn't something we were expecting to resolve, but Susannah had a very, very significant tremor in, for her life, that affected the way she ate, that affected the way that how much help she needed. It affected the way she was able to express herself on paper, on paintings, and things. And all of a sudden, it was very close to the beginning too. Her tremor resolved, and so she even when days are really, really hard, which we still do have challenging days, and Dr. Bain knows, but even then, she doesn't have a tremor, or she can be a little shaky sometimes, but that debilitating tremor is no longer there, and that I've realized never to take for granted what those seemingly minute things that this therapy has given us. They're huge.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I've learned in doing this with now quite a number of patients, and that is that things that don't sound significant to me, don't seem like they would be a major factor, become breathtakingly important to the patient and the family in ways that are difficult to predict, but very obvious when you see them.
Yeah, I mean, when we realized that the tremor was completely, pretty much completely resolved, was when Sally, Nat, our son, and I realized that we had our first real conversation at the breakfast table without somebody, helping Susannah or having to maneuver and adjust. It was pretty incredible that our, at the time, 11-year-old son noticed that, pointed that out to us.
Yeah, and for sure, one of the videos that stays in my memory is Susannah singing the national anthem. That was
Yeah,
kind.
I mean, and she practiced it, and it was something that we watched her go through this. She listened to it, she learned it, she practiced it, and then she executed it. And that's a very, that's a huge thing for us, is to watch her learn, absorb, and understand what the words really mean, and tell the story. We asked her to paraphrase can you tell us what that song says, in your own words? And she followed along, and she would tell us, and, yeah, in her own way. And it's great.
It's wonderful to think about.
Yeah.
And it means a lot to you and me and Jen and Sally, but it's hard to imagine what it means to Susannah.
Yeah, that is, and Dr. Bain has known Susannah for so long, and has always been there clinically evaluating her and seeing her, and is down at her level, and knows this just as much as we do, if not more. But seeing that connection that Susannah is now able to make with people, and able to, lack of a better way, to learn. She's able to learn, and she's able to follow along, and then she's able to have a good night's sleep. And that was not happening before.
No, she has a better life.
She has a better life. Yeah.
So Jen, if you step back and ask, as a scientist, what are the main things that you've learned from Susannah and this experience that perhaps translate to other potential opportunities?
So I think obviously the first goal was safety. As a clinician, as a parent myself, do no harm is what we're supposed to remember all the time. And really, I think that was the first goal. So we have the experience to say that ASOs are safe. We can do that. That I actually felt very comfortable doing. The question really was, what are we looking for, and what improvements are we looking for? And so Dr. Chung had executed a phenomenal initial clinical trial and really made sure that we were looking at a lot of different items. And what we've learned from Susannah, which I think is the key here, is that we have to listen to her, and she has to tell us what's getting better or what's not. And if what we're measuring is not necessarily capturing that. And so we have to be flexible in our rigid research mind. Say these are our outcome measures that we were looking for, but just being much more observant. So taking videos, I say use technology for good, not evil. So it's okay to take 1 million videos, and now we can go back and look at them and say, hey, look at that tremor. Actually, we weren't even really measuring that before. We didn't think it was necessarily that impactful for Susannah, and clearly now we can, and say that was an impactful thing. And now we've learned about that from her, and for others, should we be measuring that, or how can we measure that next time? And then I think just recognizing that we are in a brand new, brave new world, and we have to learn from her and with her parents about what the next phase is, in terms of, we've shown the safety, we've shown the improvements. Now what challenges do we have in terms of executing, continuing to care for her, and really identifying the next goals for her.
From our perspective, seeing the effects at such low doses surprised me, and I've been involved with Anna since day one, and we're seeing that in many patients with CNS dosing, is that we're seeing effects at doses lower and earlier than I had expected. And of course, translating what we're learning into the next group of patients, including other patients with KIF1A, I think is really important. So we get a chance to learn from Susannah and apply it to other patients, and we're learning about the molecular characteristics of these extremely rare diseases in ways that I think are very important. Luca, if I asked you the same question, is what are the most important things that you've learned out of this?
The most important things that I've learned out of this are that the little things are just so huge, and that there's no better feeling than seeing how proud my son Nat is of his sister, accomplishing something that that he, as a young kid, knew might never happen. That's a huge gift. And also the fact that we now have calmness in our life in certain ways where we can sit and talk to each other and relish in the fact that our daughter can sing a song, and she enjoys school and enjoys life, and looks forward to her next treatment. She knows inside that there's something that positive that happens when she sees Dr. Bain for this treatment. She's always asked recently, when is my next treatment? And the fact that she can comprehend and even ask that question is huge. But that third point of her really understanding that something is happening to her body and everything's not trapped inside the way it was before we were blessed with this ASO is pretty incredible.
Quite a story. Quite a privilege to be a part of it. I'm sure Jen and Wendy feel very much the same, that we're all uniquely privileged to participate in doing something like this. Anything that I haven't asked you folks that I should have asked? Anything you want to? It's important to talk to other parents, I suppose. Luke, any advice for other parents?
Well, first of all, one question is do you all know how grateful we are to not just both of you, but to the entire team? And we know what a sacrifice and what a bold mission this is, and we're just so thankful for the care and the innovation and the access and the fight. For other parents, I would say, and I do say this, I do connect with parents a lot, and the answer is, if there's nothing else, and if it's safe, try it and say yes, and don't try not to be afraid, because you have a whole team in your corner that's there for you, and that's true with our whole community. As well, you guys know more than anybody and have been involved in this community for so long, but there are people that care deeply for every parent and every family, and people should lean on the community.
Anything that you want to add, Jen?
I think this is an exciting and scary time, and now that we've shown that it's safe, now that I think one of the harder parts is, how do we keep going? How do we move forward? How do we move research and clinical care together safely? How do we reach more people? And just the next chapter is only beginning right now, in my mind. So thank you to n-Lorem. The entire group has been so supportive along the way at many different areas. And thank you to families like Susannah, Luke, and Sally, and Nat, who trust us to go through this together, and also recognize that we don't necessarily have the right answer, and we're figuring this out all together. And I think that's okay. We have to make changes, because what's been happening so far hasn't worked, because there isn't anything so far. So we will keep moving forward together. Takes a village.
All well said. All well said. And we shouldn't forget the FDA in this conversation. They've been very constructive throughout this and helping us treat these patients. And I look at everything we're doing is brand new, and that's a new chapter then every day. And, we've now shown we can industrialize this, we can do it repeatedly, and we can bring benefit to many types of patients. And now the challenge is to continue to grow so we can meet the need that is growing exponentially. Nothing like success. It's a high quality problem, but it's a problem. We have to raise the money to continue to do what we do. And I suppose that brings us to another goal that I had in founding n-Lorem was to create a community for these patients. I suppose the thing that affected me most about the plight of many patients with nano-rare diseases is they had no one to talk to at all. And I think Luke and other members of the KIF1A community have been instrumental in creating a community for KIF1A patients, but it's much bigger than that. And we took, these podcasts are an effort to do that. And the meeting that we have coming up, which is the second annual n-Lorem nano-rare patient colloquium, is another big step forward. And both of you will be there, which we're looking forward to sharing with you. That meeting is October 30th and 31st in the Cambridge Marriott. One of our founding donors, Biogen, foots the bill for that entire meeting, and we're very pleased to have it at a hotel with, handicapped access, which will make it easier for our patients and families. And we look forward to seeing everyone there. I think our registrations are about double what they were at this time last year, so that's another good sign. I think I'll ask Luke. You've mentioned it a couple of times, but how does it? I'd like to hear how it feels to move from being completely isolated to knowing that you are a part of a community that's much more substantial and capable of more.
Yeah, that's a great question. To be in a community that is capable of more and led by leaders and really family members like both of you is pretty incredible, because what you've done, a great gift that you've given to the whole community, and I think hopefully the whole world will put their shoulder behind this, because of what all of these families are experiencing, is this gift that you've given us to make what is an incredibly complex concept and scientific endeavor colloquial. And so now all of a sudden we have a community that's able to describe what an antisense oligonucleotide is in 2 sentences, because of resources like this podcast, because of availability from our doctors and from asking questions. So it's pretty incredible that I certainly would not have been as I'm not too savvy, but I wouldn't have been able to participate in high level science conversations with other parents without Stan Yu around, or without Dr. Bain around. But now you've given the whole community this gift of being able to actually speak about what is hopefully a life-changing treatment for our kids. So it's you've given us a second language to speak together.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're creating new knowledge as we go, and that creates not just an increment in power, it multiplies on itself. That is the power of knowledge, right? So
I will say, if I could add one more thing, without sharing their names, but another patient of Dr. Bain's and a very, very good friend of all of ours was getting dosed, and was dosed on the same day, within, I think, the same hour as Susannah. And we're right next to each other in the recovery room, or a couple of 3 beds away. And it was, talk about a community. There are people who are so close to our hearts before all of this. And then during all of this, it was, I'm getting a coffee, I'll be back for one with you. So it was like, two of us just, there, and not only speaking the same language, but watching our kids go through the same experience. And that's something that I'm just in awe of, that hopefully this will become the new normal, and a new, as Dr. Bain said, a brave new world in how we treat and care for kids like Susannah.
Well said. I think that's a great way to end this. And I want to thank both of you for, most of all, allowing us the privilege of being a part of Susannah's journey. But also thank you for this, and look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks in Boston. So thank you, and look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Dr. Bain.
Thank you for having us.
n-Lorem is a nonprofit committed to discovering and providing personalized experimental treatments for free, for life, to patients with genetic diseases that affect 1 to 30 patients worldwide, referred to by n-Lorem as nano-rare. Many of these patients progress and die without ever achieving a diagnosis. This is where n-Lorem comes in. They do the impossible by providing hope, and for those that they can help, free lifetime treatment. For more information about n-Lorem or today's episode, visit n-Lorem.org. Any questions can be sent into podcast@n-Lorem.org. Search n-Lorem on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook to connect with us. This video is hosted by Dr. Stan Crook and produced with the help of the following professionals. Thank you for watching.